Welcome to BTA Fridays Breaking the Algorithm. I'm your host, Kelly Morgan. This is where indie authors stop chasing trends. We build strategy, visibility, and confidence. Around here, we don't follow the algorithm. We break it and put something better in its place. Let's get to today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of BTA Fridays Breaking the Algorithm. Here we break the algorithm and we put something better in its place. So, for the month of April, we have been having the conversation about what it really means to be an independent author, what it means to really step into this space, right? So, we've been slowing things down this month a bit, and we've been really looking at the foundation before we jump into the whole marketing stuff. Because I think sometimes when we talk about what it means to be an independent author, I don't know about you, but I have found myself jumping straight to like platforms and social media, visibility, and ads. But I think if we are looking at it from a strategic lens, that we need to ask ourselves some bigger questions, right? Before we even go down that rabbit hole. So if you're just joining the conversation, let me quickly recap you to see where we've been, and then you can see where we're going. So in the first week, we talked about the decision. The moment that you decided not just to write the book, but the moment that you decided to put the book out into the world. And that could be maybe that you weren't writing it for yourself. Maybe you felt that you had a message to share. But you published it, right? And then you decided to let people read it. And then people started responding to it. And you're opened yourself to criticism and everything, right? That's a huge step. That's huge. So we talked about the decision to actually publish the book. And then we talked about defining the lane, like what it really means to be an independent author. Like some people are writers, that's what they do. I'm a writer for a living, I write. Some people are entrepreneurs or authorpreneurs, right? Some people are out there building whole publishing companies. Some people teach or speak or coach or build communities. And some people, like myself, realize that you're even building something bigger than you set out to do, right? Like an ecosystem. And there's nothing wrong with any of those spaces. We just really ask ourselves some hard questions and ask ourselves what that looks like for each of us. And then last week, we talked about the reality of the space, like reality that becomes time becomes currency, right? That's time is money, y'all. The reality that burnout is incredibly real in this space. The reality that the marketing side of this industry can be loud and overwhelming and confusing and expensive, right? The reality that not every opportunity in every room is meant for you. And so this week we have been talking about commitment. On the author's mic, we talked about commitment, but today on BTA Fridays, we're going to stay with the theme of commitment, but really from a more strategic perspective, because commitment isn't just emotional. Commitment shows up in the way that you structure your work. It shows up in the way that you structure your time. Commitment shows up in the way that you structure your expectations. And commitment kind of helps you set your pace as an author, right? One of the biggest mistakes I've ever made when I stepped into the independent author space was trying to do everything at once. I mean, everything, right? You, I don't know about you, but I tried to do everything that I heard of, right? And so you hear about ads. Everybody's run ads, 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 Amazon ads, ads, do this, ads, newsletters. Go do a newsletter. You got to have a newsletter. Get out there with your newsletter. Go on podcasts, get on social media, go to book signings, go to book clubs, speak, blog, do promotions, giveaways, arcs, and then they try to stack all that on top of our regular life. right? I mean, I know that I was trying to do all these things and do my 9 to 5 and still have a regular life, right? And I also found out that life is incredibly unpredictable. And then, things become overwhelmed, right? So then you burn out. And then you start questioning whether you should be doing any of this at all, right? So the strategic part of commitment is deciding what you can realistically not only do, but sustain, right? Not for a week, not just during the launch of the book, but over long term. Because, to me, strategy isn't about what you can do all at once, right? The strategy to me in the indie author space is about what you can keep doing consistently. And that is where pacing comes in. I don't think we think about it. So, if you're building a long-term author journey, you have to think about the output and the energy, right? How often can you realistically write? Like, when do you have time to actually sit down and write? That's the first thing. How often can you show up publicly? Like, how often do you have time for book signings and just all types of things that you have to do to show up? How often or how much time can you dedicate to your outreach, to your network, or to visibility? And, these questions aren't about limiting yourself, but they're really about protecting your sustainability. That's commitment, y'all. Another part of commitment shows up in systems. And what do I mean by that? Because when you try to do everything by yourself, the whole process of whatever you're trying to do can become incredibly exhausting. So over time, commitment means building small systems that help you support the work. And that could mean something like organizing your contacts or keeping track of your outreach. It could mean taking all your content and scheduling it right at once. It could mean having a place where your readers can find you and your work. Systems don't have to be complicated. They're made to make it so that it's easier for you to continue to show up. That's commitment. Commitment also means the understanding that growth rarely happens overnight, right? The indie author space can make it feel like everyone else is moving faster. Everyone else is selling faster. Everyone else is reaching readers. But really, most indie author journeys are slow because they're built through relationships. They're built through consistency, through continually creating work over time and then showing up over time. And that's where commitment and strategy connect. So, if you know that this is a long term journey for you, your strategy will look very, very different than someone who is just publishing that one book and then moving on. So, your expectations will be different. Your pace will be different. And then you won't maybe be pressured to do everything all at once. I think as independent authors, there's a lot of platforms out there to help you kind of get your book out there. And I think you really have to really take the time and the commitment to evaluate any platform before you invest in it, because you have to understand what you're building. You're building something over time. And, when you're building something over time, it takes commitment. You have to show up consistently. Consistency and commitment go hand in hand. And that idea of connecting directly about what we talk about here on BTA Fridays, commitment, strategy. That's what BTA Fridays is all about. But when you do implement commitment and strategy into your author journey, you'll find yourself that you're able to step outside of the pressure, you're able to step outside of trends, you're able to evaluate your goals and really decide what is going to work for you, right? Then you realize that not every platform is for you. Not every tactic that you see online is for you, and that it's okay to say no, right? It's about something that you build that works for you and your life. So, this week, if you're thinking about commitment from a strategic perspective, right? Strategic, here are a few questions worth asking yourself. And I ask myself these questions every day, y'all. What pace of work can I realistically sustain, right? What can I do that I can just sustain? What systems would make this journey easier to manage? So, tools. What systems can you implement? Doesn't have to be anything big. It could just simply be getting a landing page and let people being able to find you. Doesn't have to be anything overwhelming. But that is a question that you should ask yourself. What systems would make this journey easier to manage? What kind of timeline am I willing to give this work before expecting results? Oh my God, do you ask yourself that question? What kind of timeline am I willing to give this work before expecting results? Wow, that's huge, you guys. Think about that. And how can I build strategy that fits my life instead of trying to force my life to fit someone else's strategy? How can I build a strategy that fits my life instead of forcing my life to fit someone else's strategy? Huge questions. This one, I think about this one all the time, y'all. What kind of timeline am I willing to give this work before expecting results? That is such a huge question. I never asked myself in the past, but I ask myself that question often, right? Because the commitment in the indie author space isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what matters. It's about building a pace that you can actually sustain. You know what, y'all? Commitment in the indie author space to me is about continuing to move forward without burning yourself out along the way. And that's how, to me, a real indie author journey is built, right? And that's a huge part of what it means to break the algorithm. All right, y'all, let me give you my laundry list of things before I let you go. TrustBridge is my curated introduction service. If you are seeking visibility, I have a network of book clubs, podcasts, bookstores, and more. I'm happy to introduce you. Go to TrustBridge Author Services, learn all about the service, and learn if it is for you. If you are a creative in this space, I have guests on the Author's Mic every Monday. If you're interested, go to the Be a Guest tab on my website, fill out the information. You too can be a guest. If you are on your journey, I have a free guide on my website. It's called So You Want to Write a Book. Go get it. It's free. Start your journey. If you want to support me as an author, I have 2 books out there. Wait for it and You Sound White. I will sign them. I will ship them to you at no charge, but no pressure. Get them wherever good books are sold. And lastly, we do have a book club. It is called the IRS, the Indie Reader Society. You can join us as a reader. All the information is on the website. We would love to have you. My goal is to grow the book club as big as I can so that when we pick up that indie author's book, the impact that we make on them is phenomenal. And then you can pitch us as an author. We don't know about your book if you don't tell us. Go to my website, brightheadedpublishing.com. Click on the More tab, and that's where you'll see the information to pitch your book, and that's where you'll see the information to join the IRS. All right, y'all. This has been another episode of BTA Fridays, Breaking the Algorithm. I will catch you next Friday. Bye.